So I don't believe in a God with a beard sitting on a throne in some kingdom above our sky. I don't believe in a separate imaginary friend that will reward me if I am a good boy. And yet, everything I have come to understand about life is that everything is an expression of the divine. Every single interaction, every single person, every blade of grass, whether you choose to just see that as a quantum field of electromagnetic energy, which is just a substrata of light energy, or whether you're just into the earth and the mother nature and you see the divine bounty of just one forest or one fruit tree as the answer and the evidence of the divine. Like to really, really drop down into the majesty of the Eden that we live in. Like, as I'm being called to speak more openly about my faith, I notice how scared parts of me are to really talk about this stuff. So petrified of being misunderstood, so petrified that the 18-year-old version of me, who is a passionate atheist, would think me some nut or loon. And I've spent 22 years trying to talk to people about this stuff in a way where I won't put them off or be considered weird, or I haven't wanted to preach to the choir. That market is totally saturated, and I still have a massive amount of resistance to what I believe to be an industry which is marred with madness and some terrible thinking and some terrible science and just inappropriate ideas that actually only go on to perpetuate our sense of separation, or perpetuate our sense that there's somewhere to get to or there's somewhere to go. And this kind of ascension model, whether we go from, fantasizing about our materialism and then we supposedly wake up and then we fantasize about being able to bend over and touch our toes better in yoga, or we go from, not wanting like shiny cars to wanting shiny teachers, and it's still just co-opted by this ideology that that things aren't okay as they are. We're not okay as we are, and the industry feeds into that. People get addicted to workshop after workshop after workshop, and this fantasy of the ideal teacher that corrupts. And people deify someone because they want them to be considered special, but then they find out they're human because they're doing untold terrible things. And that is awful. But this loop of deification which just blurs all the boundaries. And so many of these teachers, I don't believe, set out to be Machiavellian marauders of spirit and sexuality and all the terrible things that are almost constantly coming out about these people who have put themselves in a position of influence, and people have been ready to laud them as special, and how corrupting that is. And so many teachers that started out probably with the most beautiful intentions to help, completely losing their way within this idea. And yet, in the non-duality world, there's this complete dislocation from body, a complete dislocation from heart, where someone's suffering will be just dismissed as part of their ego structure, and they'll be told to transcend ego. Like ego is seen to be this failing mechanism in our mind. And yes, it harks back from our survivalism. It harks back from our primal nature. It's the animal limbic processing centers that then drive our early consciousness to control and to make safe. And our ego is just part of our survival mechanism, and it has beauty in every aspect of it. Is it well trained? Is it well suited? Is it self-serving? Is it afraid? Is it problematic? Yes, of course. Is attacking it or denying it helpful? No. Is dismissing our suffering and then just pretending to try and meditate and be in the oneness and not deal with the fact we're still angry with our mother, is that a solution? No. Is the idea that that's some trifling absurdity that doesn't really matter? And it's like, that's That is the point. We are embodied here as part, as I believe, as a pantheist, as a single field of consciousness where nothing is separate and everything is included, and everything is part of the unfolding evolutionary impulse. Where consciousness is expanding, it's trying into new forms. It's like, how is it for someone to be a complete rave nutter hedonist at 27 and then from 27 have a massive oneness experience and then try and bring spirituality to a world which seems allergic to it, and therefore you've got to hide it. And so that's been my journey, and I think it's been really complicated and quite painful, and I've made it way harder for myself. So I'm learning about that. The universe is learning through my endeavors at that. My feelings are the feedback loop. And as I liberate myself more and I speak to my family and I bring more love to the people around me and more understanding and more compassion and more boundaries, the whole field of people around me and the whole field of the world around me is evolved with and through me, and I them. My work is your work and your work is my work. And most of my work focuses on healing kind of the early years, the inner child trauma, because that's where we really get blocked, and that's where we really then project our judgments and our doubts and our fears onto the divine, onto this universe. But it's like we spend our life in search of the great magic. And we think it's going to come from our job, or we think it's going to come from our relationship, or we think it's going to come when we get that deal, or get that girl, or get that contract, or pay off the mortgage, or invest in crypto. And we just keep pulling that curtain back, and instead of finding God, we find some man pulling the levers. And yet actually the ultimate curtain, it's like we're looking at the mundane. And if we can truly pull back that curtain, then the majesty and magic is there, always, every day, every moment. The divine is saying, hey, where are you at today? What's your interactions? How are your feelings? What's appearing in your reality, in your perception? What's being experienced collectively? It's like, this seems to me to be the only question, the only exploration, the only journey. And yet so many people are then taking that with this, that we have to work hard and we have to be better and we have to be more evolved and more awake. And as soon as we're thinking about departing from where we are and that we think something could be better, then we're in a place of judgment. And when we're in a place of judgment, we will be comparing ourselves to others. We will, whether we're competing to be the wealthiest, or to meditate for long, or how much Cambo we've poisoned ourselves with, or how many ayahuasca sittings have we done, or just all the different methods by which we think we've travelled long enough and far enough to finally fall in love with reality. It's simpler than that. It's simpler than that. And that's also flipping complicated, that it's so simple. The paradoxes are almost unbearable. Because we don't want to just dismiss it all as pointlessness. That's the very point. We inherit this packet of pain through the lineage, literally epigenetically, and culturally and communally together as a field. As I've been doing more and more ancestral healing, it's like I'm not healing my ancestral line. We're healing the soul of the world, the soul of the single consciousness. And when we start thinking like that, we realize it's like our freedom is a revolutionary act. Our freedom is the greatest purpose. It's the greatest contribution. Can we do other awesome things and support great causes? Of course. But it's already here. You could take a moment and just look around the space that you're in and choose before you do it to perceive that it is a metaphor, that it's something has been reflected or explained. So you could look around the room that you are in. Sorry about that, my computer just did something very strange. You could look around the room that you're in or the space you're in right now, before doing it, just tell yourself that there is a message. There is a message. Something metaphorical, the way something's positioned next to something else, or one word that stands out, or something in your field. And if you can choose to perceive that as an instruction, as a nudge, so we start to see. So try that now. And maybe you'll think to yourself, well, I'm just making it up, right? Guys just told me just to do something contrived, right? It's not real. And for me, we have inside ourselves this intelligence that knows how to cut our finger, right? If we cut our finger, it knows how to heal it. If you stop and just think about that for a moment, it's mind-boggling. I have no idea how to do that. This incredible intelligence inside us that can heal us. It also knows what's true for us. It knows what work is true for us. It knows if we're in alignment, and it seeks this benevolent, empowered and liberated expression. And so whether it's arbitrary or not, whether it's truly synchronistic or it just has, as Jung said, the feeling of noumena, is it numinous? Does it have a sense of divine messaging? Like this sensation that something significant is being expressed. It's like if we're paying attention, that guidance is everywhere. And so pantheism is about seeing everything as an expression of the divine, seeing everything as part of the perfection. But that isn't about ignoring or dismissing or diminishing our struggles, or pretending we're not vulnerable or frail, or that the vicissitudes of material embodied life isn't at times brutal, and that there is no escaping our death, and there is no escaping how we feel about our finality. And we can change how we feel about it. But it's like, this is not about this fantasy that we'll do our work and then live in some blessed bubble beyond pain. That is not helpful. If we can journey into our pain, we can find magic and message and meaning. Now, that doesn't mean we have to just be some kind of awful non-dualistic dick who just looks at someone suffering without any compassion and just knows that there's some meaning in there, or it's some empty meaninglessness because it's just coming from the structure of their personality. It's like, no, there's something richer. It's not just about Father Sky consciousness based on oneness. And it's not just about the earther, Mother Earth, and getting into nature. It's like we need both. It is, consciousness is and ever will be, stays exactly the same as a single field, beyond duality, unchanging, eternal, unmoving. And yet, in the material embodied form, there is evolution. In the material embodied form, there is an experiment of what works. Arguably, from that perspective, the materially embodied world is like a stress test. It's like, okay, let's put this together. You've been put together in the cultural context of you, in the family of you. And they're like, right, now let's put them to an extremely challenging environment, the Earth, uncivilized as it is, and let's see how they fare. Can they focus? Can they manage? Can they stay chirpy? Can they seem attractive? Will they be able to mate? Will that line of genes and that line of culture, does it prosper? Is it working? Is it adapted to this? Is it adaptive and self-learning and evolving, and therefore evolving the whole field of knowingness? Then it will be more likely to be more blessed. Will it be more likely to be expansive and prosperous? It's like, can we get more onto that train? Can we be more conscious of what's been trying to be learned through us? Can we feel as though we are the outstretched eyes and ears and hands of the divine, trying to work out what feels the best through our emotional feedback based on who it is, what it's like to be who we are? And yet this beautiful experiment has been co-opted by weird education and poor parenting and even weirder dislocated business practices, where we've lost that sense of the fact we're still in Eden. And our perception and our ability to return to that. In any moment, someone could just have a completely mind-blowing epiphany where they go from fear to love. We could choose to have a holy moment right now where we're just like, oh my God, this is such an insane blessing to be alive with all of this complexity. I'm not dismissing the struggles of the world or the troubles of the world. I'm not pretending not to have parts of my heart broken by the state of the world. And that is part of how we're learning. That's part of how we're evolving. Am I doing my bit to make the world a better place? I believe I am doing my bit. Could I do more? Possibly. Definitely. And yet, I used to be an activist pushing and despairing and resisting and fighting, and that to me didn't seem to work. And so it's, how do I manage this paradox of everything is perfect and constant, and yet everything is evolving, everything is changing, and there is an invitation to be at this edge and consciousness. You know, since I've been studying different conscious movements, it's like throughout all of the ages, there's just been this sense that we're on the edge of something burgeoning. You know, like something, well, we're about to enter into this new age, you know, whether it's the age of Aquarius or the golden age or the time. And it's like, that's just what consciousness feels like on the edge of it. In its embodied material form, it's got this incredible sensation of any minute now, any minute now, any minute now. It's the imminent, extraordinary nowness of possibility being expressed in multiple forms in every moment. It's like it's aching and expressing through itself. It's like the rosebud, like being the rosebud, but so excited about being the rose. And that's where we are in human consciousness. And that's why so many people are so ready to grab the tiller and try and steer it in a different direction, to try and swim upstream or to push for something more beautiful. But I'm not sure we can push for something more beautiful. It does, you know, the ancient, you know, Japanese would ask these koans, you know, does the grass grow by itself? Or, you know, it's like there's an ever-pressing emergence, and we can lean forward into it and try and like force it into form, or can we just be the rosebud, trusting that the rose is going to be delicious, but it's beautiful as the rosebud for its imminence, for its potential? Can we be in human consciousness and know that it could be way more beautiful? And yet, can we bring love to where we are? Can we see the perfection in where we are? Like, many teenagers are shallow and insecure and territorial and disloyal and difficult expressing their emotions, difficulty controlling their impulses, unkind, unreliable, out of integrity. And not all, obviously, but many. I certainly would. That was a good description of me. And yet I wouldn't point a finger at them and think that there's anything wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them. They're young. They're young. And human consciousness is young. I do not place myself, I'm not placing myself as superior. I am, you know, I'm moments away from a 4-limb flailing tantrum at any given moment. It's like human consciousness is 12. And therefore, everything that we might look at the world and think of as wrong is like, is a 12-year-old wrong, or are they just young? And what can we do to bring maturity and make integrity look good? And how can we do our part, but without departing from the idea that everything's perfect? Do we really think that something is operating outside of divine order? And I don't mean by that predetermined. And I don't mean by that some meritocracy managed by some bearded being. That's not, in my understanding and in my study of the esoteric text, what is being talked about. So pantheism is seeing everything as an expression of the divine. And that includes wrapping your arms around your frailties, your vulnerabilities, your humanness, your mess. This is about mother and father, feminine and masculine. Masculine. It's in the divine. If it's in the divine field, it has a place. It has a part to play. All of these things do. And that means if everything has a part to play, then so do you. Like, how is consciousness wanting to communicate through you in response to this? How is consciousness wanting you to turn up in your relationship? How is consciousness wanting you to turn up at work? And this is not a ladder. This is not me adding a whole bunch of new things to your to-do list. This is like, where are you choosing to identify? Is it your name? Is it your age? Is it your culture? Is it your family name? Is it your gender or perception of gender? Is it your sexuality? Is it any of those things? You could and you can, and there's probably great beauty in loads of your individual flavours. And part of your uniqueness is part of what the divine wants to bring to the world through you. But where's the primary DNA? Is it human? Or is it the ultimate divine? Is it the ultimate field currently being expressed through you? When we can think of it in that way, it's like, we find ourselves suddenly great-great-grandfather and great-great-grandmother to the world. We care less about the minutiae or the outcome. And we're feeling much more into what is being called for. Who am I being called to be in this? What is being asked to be evolved through my family line? What is the story of the generations before me looking to me to be an expression of a freedom that they could never have dreamed of? It's like, and do we need to talk about the things that prevent us from looking at life in this way? The 3 limiting beliefs that take us out of that. I'm not good enough. The solution is external to me. And I'm a pointless nothing in a meaningless universe. Those 3 beliefs underpin all of the suffering in the world. And are there techniques and tools that we can learn to be able to bring it back to know I am perfect as I am. I have everything I need within me. And I am a unique and important part of a connected, loving universe. The same force that knows how to heal your finger. It is benevolent. It wants health. It wants healing. It's in your very fibre and fabric of your material form. You don't need to believe in some separate consciousness. That is your consciousness, and we share it. And it's everywhere. It's not just in the humans. It's in the desk and the walls around you. You can open your heart to fall in love with life in its entirety. And then suddenly the perfection starts to become just unavoidably obvious. The miracle of life, the magic in that which previously appeared mundane. Now, that doesn't mean I'm walking around with a simpering smile on my face and not being a complete dick at least 20% of my life. Because I am also this incredibly earthy, confused, conflicted human that was squeezed out of a vaginal vice at least 2 years before I was ready to walk. Trying my best to fit into this form and understand what the hell's going on, and then being dropped into the weirdest educational system and a world without a kind of a deep understanding of the simplicity and beauty of spirit. Dogmatic faith and dogmatic ideas, or strange, whether we're affected by the traditional religious stuff or we go into the new age and just bandied around with weird ideas that further perpetuate the idea of duality and separation. Or worse, we're in the flipping non-dualistic world and they're just dismissing everything that isn't just part of the oneness, which is a complete misunderstanding of the point. So doing whatever we need to do to remember we are perfect as we are, as all things are. That we have everything we need within us because there is nothing external to us. And that we are a unique and important part of a connected, loving universe because we are the connected, loving universe.